changes that happen during the postpartum period sometimes feel too taboo to talk about, but I got some moms here with me today to discuss the experiences that often get overlooked. Sarah is back for this chat along with Shobana Lakkavally, Amanda Muse, and Sarah Juman-Yassin. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Shobana, let's get into it. You had great pregnancies, but how did that compare to your deliveries and recovery?
Wow, my recovery was very painful and very debilitating. You know, I thought I had all my bases covered. I tried to prepare for postpartum depression. I had the pelvic floor massages, you know, in hoping that I would prevent tearing. But I didn't think about what would happen if I did tear and how that recovery was. And no one talks about it. We have all these C-sections, all these, you know, vaginal births, and no one talks about the trauma that happens to our body. And so to put into perspective, my first child I had, you know, after a long labor, epidural vacuum birth, right? I tore. Second child, 2 hours in the car, no epidural. It can happen to anybody. And I experienced a second to third degree tear in the muscle, right? And so to give you a little bit of context here, second degree tear is tearing of the muscle, which is the perineum between your vagina and then your back end, right? Third degree tear, you're cutting through your anus. Fourth degree tear, you're cutting all the way from the front to the back. And imagine eating, sitting,
Everybody's
laughing.
giggling right now.
Right? Yes. If you still feel
Imagine
it.
going through it. It sounds horrific.
Exactly. And I only had a second to third degree tear. But I couldn't walk for months. I was on Advil and Tylenol in rotation. I had hemorrhoids, and I was so terrified of just splitting open when I went to the bathroom. So stool softeners, my best friend. I was like, give me those stool softeners. Like, I didn't know who used them before, and then I was like, now I know, now I know. And, you know, it can be an isolating process. Like, my husband, Mike, and I, we had a conversation. I'm like, I'm gonna take care of the baby, feeding the baby, you do everything else. He's like, cool, I'm on that. And still, it was isolating because as I left the hospital and I wasn't able to walk, right? I had sutures sticking into my tear. I asked the nurse, I'm like, can I have a wheelchair? And she looked up at me and she was just like, why? She's like, women walk out of here with C-sections all the time. And it was so diminishing to me, and it just shows how we as a society kind of treat labor, pregnancy, and women. We just lump them all together, and if one can do it, the other should too, and if you can't, then you're shamed for it, right?
Yes.
So that's why these kind of conversations are so important.
Absolutely, because that is a lot. So not only are you going through the hormonal fluctuations, you're going through major pain. And maybe feeling like you are not able to contribute what you wanted to.
Exactly.
You can't even get up, you're afraid to go pee, right? Okay, a lot of women hope for a vaginal delivery. It's this whole thing, and I was one of them, and I don't know why I was so obsessed. But Amanda, you ended up needing a C-section. That was your experience. It was not what you wanted.
No, you know, you're right. It's kind of like everybody wants the regular birth, right? We don't even want to think about the other options, although I feel like with a little bit of time, we're realizing motherhood comes to many people in many different ways, right? So I had my babies, actually I was living in Malaysia, and so I was pregnant with my first, and I was like, we are gonna have a water birth. I sought out the only water birth guy in Malaysia, and I didn't even want to talk about a C-section, but when it came down to it, my baby was sunny side up, she was not coming out, and so we needed to go for a C-section. What was so hard was that disconnect of like, this was the plan and it went completely a different direction, and that feeling of being out of control. And I recognized in that moment, like, I was disconnecting from my experience, and as much as I was connecting to the baby, the healing for me was not coming so quickly. And I remember with my second, we knew, okay, if VBAC wasn't an option, I just make those babies really big. And I remember my dog, I said to him, like, how big is this scar gonna be, you know? And I'm gonna have another one? And he goes, no. And he said, it's just gonna be the size of my hand. And I was like, oh, right, because you're just going in, taking this cute little baby out. And it was a healing experience, the second one, but it really prompted me actually to start my YouTube channel, because this is where I realized 12 years ago, people were not talking about C-sections online. It was like the one lady with 7 kids and birthing them in the house. And I was like, I didn't have that experience. So it really helped me kind of find my way back, but it is a journey.
It is a journey. And VBAC, for those who don't know, vaginal birth after C-section. So often if you've had one C-section, they tell you to just go ahead and have another. It might be, I don't know, is it easier to do it that way? You're like, I don't know, but that's what I did.
The second one was great. We had music playing.
Oh my gosh, I'm with you with the second one too, because I got drugs. don't know why. I was like super mom for the first one, like, oh no, I'm pushing him out all by myself. And then I was like, why did I do that? Why? Okay, Sarah, you also had C-sections for both your kids and thought everything was good, but tell us about your recovery.
So I wasn't planning a C-section, just like Amanda. I was gonna have it natural. That was the plan. I got big hips. We're gonna go for it. So I didn't really look up on C-sections. What was the aftercare, etc. And then I had a lot of pain after about 8 months. So I went to go see my osteopath. And she told me, which I didn't really think about, your organs move to accommodate that baby growing inside of you. And then when you have a C-section, it has to move a little bit more to pull that baby out. So it's supposed to settle on its own, but it doesn't always settle 100%. So she did very gentle, like, adjustments just to put the organs back in place. And that, to me, it really helped in my back pain. But another thing that I really didn't know is about C-section scar tissue. Because I didn't think about it after birth. I wasn't thinking I was gonna have a C-section. And after the baby came out, I was like a hamster on a wheel. I was counting poos, I was counting time between feeds, right? And it was just all about the baby, the 2-week checkup, the 4-week checkup, and it was all about the baby's health. But I never thought about my health and what was happening, the scar tissue was there, until actually my second one, when I had to have another C-section. I was following YouTubers, influencers, and they were talking about scar tissue. And I thought, how come I didn't know about this 3 years ago when I had my first one? It's not really something that's promoted. As a mom, a new mom, take care of yourself. This is what has to happen. These are your follow-ups. You get one follow-up after 6 weeks, and that's it. So all that scar tissue massage, I didn't have it.
Yeah. Oh, wow. See, I still didn't know that. So that's good to know. So, Sarah, you have 4 kids?
I do.
You have 4 kids.
It shocks me every day.
I'm a mom of 4. Look at that.
I don't even like saying the sentence. It freaks me right out.
Does it really?
Yeah, because in my head, I'm like, I don't know, I should be going to university. It doesn't feel right or real. It feels make-believe.
You're like, I'm still a kid. Where did all these kids come from?
Yeah, exactly. These are mine, my responsibility.
Right? My husband and I say it to each other all the time, like after we're done like disciplining them or something, and then they leave the kitchen, we're like, what are we doing?
Yeah. Are we the adults?
We don't know what we're doing. Like, we're the grown-ups.
Yeah.
So you had a big gap, like a 10-year gap between births. How did that affect your body and recovery?
Yeah, so a couple different things. Very similarly, I had a episiotomy my first birth at 21. I had 3 kids by the time I was 25, 2 failed epidurals, all in hospital. And I find myself pregnant in a pandemic and struggling with the fear around birth. I actually had prenatal depression and found out in therapy that I actually was carrying a lot of the things that happened in my birth and recovery into this new situation, even at, 35, 36. So what I really ended up doing was 4 different birth plans. And I'm not a crunchy granola kind of person. I never was like, I will go do the water birth thing. But there was so much more information now. There was so much more support online. And I allowed that to be one of my options. And I ended up having a much more educated birth. I had a really great birth at home with my entire family present, with my husband present, which was a big reason during pandemic. You're worried about separation from partner. So ultimately, I ended up having a better recovery. Again, like people like Amanda who chose to share online and be really vulnerable with their experiences allowed me to come in a lot more educated, and I ended up having a way better recovery.
I love that. So, I guess you learn along the way, but also the information catches up with you.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, if I could do it all again now, all the goodies, the products, which we're going to get into a little bit later on the show, but there's so much now for parents. So this conversation is just getting started. We're going to take